What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Get Over Yourself podcast, a podcast dedicated to destroying your self limitations and helping you achieve the life that you dream of. If you don't know by now, I'm your podcast host, Brandon Davis. And in today's episode of the Get Over Yourself podcast, we're going to be discussing a topic we discussed last week, but in a lot more depth. So if you guys listened to last week's episode, you may remember at the very last bullet point of the 5 do's is getting into the right mentality, or the I get to mindset. Today's episode is going to be all focused on this I get to mindset. We're going to be discussing what it is, how we can overcome some of the victim mentality mindsets that we might have inside of our lives currently, and how we can kind of push ourselves to upgrading our sphere and recognizing that these excuses and these life circumstances that we're sometimes thrown into aren't always the worst things that may be coming to pass for us. So guys, make sure you listen to last week's episode, because once again, we're going to be tying back to a lot of the concepts previously discussed. And if you've already listened, I hope you enjoy today's episode. So with that all being said, let's jump into it. I first want to recognize some of the privileges that we have inside of our lives, especially for all my audience who listens inside of the US. I think it's like 95% of the people who listen to my podcast come from here in the United States. So I want you to kind of sit back and recognize the amount of privileges we have inside of our lives. I'm not saying everything's picture perfect 24/7 here in the United States. We go through a lot of turmoil and whatnot. But for the most part, for actually better than any other country out there, we are so privileged. We are beyond blessed. And I guess a question I have for you early on is, how often do you actually count those blessings? I recognize life isn't always amazing and we go through hardships and whatnot, but we're living in the most free country there is in the world. We are blessed with, sometimes, I know you can argue this one, but we have a government who I believe is actually trying to do right for us. We have our own freedoms to say what we want, to kind of be the person we want to be. And I think that comes down to a lot of the privilege that we have been given over the years. But with great privilege comes a great responsibility not to abuse it. We're privileged with so many beautiful things. We can walk to the grocery store and we immediately have access to good food, clean water. We have amazing school systems here. We're just beyond blessed. And I feel like sometimes we forget that as residents of or citizens here in the United States, or if you're listening from some other country, recognize some of the privileges you have, because sometimes we often forget how blessed we really are. Now, with that concept in mind, I want you also to think about some of the privileges inside of your life that may have leaked over into entitlement. Sometimes we feel like since we have our lifestyle a certain way, we're entitled to just certain things that come up. If you live kind of more of a lavish lifestyle, sometimes you just might be entitled to living a certain experience in the way that you see it, but not maybe how somebody serving you or how the world perceives it. Especially, once again, coming back to all my listeners here in the United States, sometimes we definitely let our entitlement speak for ourselves, and it's not always what we should be doing. I believe it's not a horrible thing to always be entitled. I think there are certain things we are entitled to. It's very limited. I think we're all entitled to the love of Jesus Christ. For all my Christian listeners out there, I think we're all entitled to his grace. But besides that, there's not many things in life that we should be entitled to or feel that we are entitled to. And I also am a firm believer that this sense of entitlement actually leads to a victim mentality, or this victim mindset. And a victim mentality can be simply described as woe be unto me. There's everything in life is kind of against me. I'm a victim in all circumstances. When you have a victim mentality, you're kind of a pushover in some ways. And I'm sorry if I'm calling you out on this one, but I truly believe you can be a pushover, always looking for attention and finding an excuse towards everything. And being a victim doesn't always look the same for everyone. You have the clear victims who actually go through hardships. They go through these rough times. They're victim of a crime, of hate, of whatever it may be. And I'm not speaking on those. They are clear victims inside of our world where in a court of law or in other manners, they are victims. I'm talking about the people who don't really have that rough of a situation. I mean, don't get me wrong, everyone takes challenges and hardships in their own sense. But a victim mentality is somebody who is seeking to be the victim. They like being the victim. They like the attention that comes from it. And also, along with this victim mentality is kind of the belief that everything in life is somehow working against you, right? And I think that once again, it does stem from this privilege we have, this entitlement we sometimes have inside of our life, expecting everything to always be cherries and roses, right? Super sweet and kind of full of joy. But when you do have this victim mentality, it kind of crushes your spirits a little bit, and you want to be the center of attention. You want to be the person who always has something going wrong with them. So that way, for whatever reason inside your head, it boosts your endorphins when you do something cool. People give you praise, and people kind of treat you differently simply because you have been going through things. And guys, newsflash, I understand. Once again, I'm not saying people go through the exact same hardships. I'm one of the privileged folks. I have an amazing life, and I recognize that. But I also will do my best to not live a victim mentality where I'm always saying, look at me, my life is so hard. I recognize I'm blessed. I think every single listener here in the United States should recognize that as well. Even if you're in a very difficult situation here in the US, it's still better than 99% of the world. So recognize those blessings and ditch that victim mindset. Now, if you have this victim mindset, you may be thinking, okay, what's the opposite of that? How do I kind of overcome that? And how do I live a more fulfilled lifestyle so I can actually accomplish these dreams like this podcast is dedicated to? So let me hone back in on the exact topic of today's episode. And what I'm cluing in from last week is the I get to mentality, this I get to mindset. And for everyone who, for some reason, didn't listen to last week's episode, haven't had the opportunity to go back and listen, the I get to mindset is very simple. It's the concept of I get to do X, Y, or Z. And you use that as a blessing inside of your life. Or in other words, you can use this as one of your privileges and ditch that victim mentality as long as you don't abuse it. The I get to mindset is helping people overcome these victim mentalities inside of their life and recognizes that they are able to live their dreams despite the challenges that the world or universe or whatever you believe in has kind of thrown your way. Because I've said it, I think this is my fourth time saying it on the podcast. I understand that people go through different hardships. I don't control those situations. I control my own life. And you are able to control your own life as well. I am incredibly blessed. A lot of my listeners are more blessed than me. I am incredibly blessed. A lot of my listeners are way less blessed than me. You've had a harder life. Some people have had it way easier. Some people are kind of on the same level as me. Some people have had it way more difficult. But we are all living our own lives. So if we want to ditch that victim mentality and recognize that the only way we're ever going to accomplish something is by, sticking our head down and grinding through it ourselves, then you have to start practicing this I get to mentality. This I get to do X, Y, or Z. So here's a couple examples. I think it can be summarized into 3 different parts in the I get to mentality. There's the good ones, the so-sos, and then the hardships, but all of them are still focused on the I get to mentality. So let me break these down a little bit. So some typical good I get tos can be I get to eat 3 meals a day. Once again, if we're focusing on everyone here in the United States, every single person in some way, form, fashion has a way to eat a couple meals a day. Even if that's provided to you by the government, you still get to eat. That is a privilege you get here in the United States. I get to eat meals a day. That's one of the very good ones. Another one, I get to hang out with my friends and family. For the most part, every single person here in the United States is able to hang out with their friends and family. That's an I get to that is very simple, very good. Or even more simplistic, I get to watch my favorite TV show every day. Maybe you get home after a long day's work and you just simply like to relax by watching your favorite TV show. You get to do that. That's your mentality. I get to watch my favorite TV show. Very simple, very good. Now let's jump over into the middle ground, this kind of so-so area where it's still I get to, but it may be a little bit harder at looking at. So for the first one, I get to go to work. Maybe you don't always enjoy going to work. Your job isn't your favorite thing on earth. You don't necessarily love who you work with, but it's still putting food on the table, right? You're still providing for your family. You're able to earn a living and kind of boost your confidence in knowing that you gave a hard day's work, right? It's this kind of in the middle spot of I get to go to work. It's not necessarily my favorite thing, but I am privileged enough to be able to go and do that. I get to go to work. Or in the same concept, if you're a college student like myself or younger, I get to go to school. This is one I wrestle with a lot inside of my life. I don't always recognize the blessing it is to go to school. But when I sit back and think about it, I have amazing professors. I have great students and friends around me at my university. I've learned things that I just simply cannot learn from going to school. If you took a different route, put that into perspective as well. Maybe you went to trade school. I get to go to trade school. I get to learn these valuable skills so I could perform better at work and live a more fulfilled lifestyle and honestly live a life that's actually helping somebody. I get to do that. Now, this is in the middle ground, I'd say as well, because sometimes it's a little difficult. Maybe you have to study for these exams, and in the moment you're thinking, gosh, I don't want to be a student. I get to go to school, but this sucks, right? It could be a positive thing, it could be a negative thing. Either way, you still get to do it. And here's kind of a funny one for all my moms who listen here on the show, for all my dads who are constantly struggling with this for their young children, or once again, if you're just kind of off on your own, you have to struggle with this yourself. It's that I get to fold laundry. And once again, these are just examples, but I'm trying to put it in perspective so you can understand this. Maybe I get to fold laundry as a middle ground for you. Everyone hates the chore of folding laundry. It's so tedious. It takes hours to put it in the washer and then dryer. It's a very long process. Then you have to fold it all, put it away, and make it look all spick and span in your house again. Doing laundry is one of the most annoying chores. Like, it feels good to have fresh clothes, don't get me wrong, but it takes so long and it's such a tedious process. That's why I put it in this middle ground. I get to fold laundry. It's not a horrible thing. Obviously, it's a very good thing, but it can be tedious. So when you find yourself folding laundry or performing chores in whatever fashion it may be, do you find yourself complaining about it more, or are you recognizing these blessings, these opportunities you have to actually be able to fold your laundry? Some people don't have access to washers and dryers. Some people don't have access to clean clothing, or heck, even thinking about the clothing itself. Maybe people don't have as new of clothes as you. Maybe people don't have the same kind of style that you may be able to afford. You get to fold your laundry. You get that opportunity. Look on it on the bright side rather than the negative of, I have to fold my laundry again. Now, jumping over to the last section of the I get to mentality are the very difficult ones, the hard situations. And these can vary on their own deviance. Once again, everyone goes through trials in their own fashion. But picture the I get to mentality in the hard situations. I get to go through hardship. I get to go through pain. I get to go through heartache. I get to go through death. I get to go through suffering. I get to go through my physical hell inside of my life, whatever that may look like. You get to do that. And I understand that might be hard for it might be a hard pill to swallow for some of my listeners, but you get to go through those hard times. You get to go through those hard times. Life, once again, as I already mentioned 4 times on the podcast, it's not always cherries and roses, but you get to go through that. What do these hardships look like? Hardships determine our destiny. It's how we face our hardships that kind of determines who we're going to be in the future, who we're being for ourselves in the moment. If you could sit back and you recognize, yeah, my life is very hard right now. I'm going through the ringer. I feel like I'm in a boxing ring against a pro boxer, and I'm just out here. I'm an amateur and I don't know what I'm doing. And I feel like I'm getting punched and kicked left and right. Life is beating me up right now. You still get to go through that. And what a blessing it is inside of your life that you get to do it. Because in these hardships, in these difficult moments, these painful moments, you get to do it. You get to learn from it. You get to experience it that way. 5 months, 10 months, a year down the road, 15 years down the road, maybe you'll meet somebody who went through something similar. You can relate to them. Maybe you go through something inside of your life that was even more difficult and you think, wow, what happened to me 5 years ago actually prepared me more for this moment. I'm grateful I got to go through that exact experience, so now I'm more prepared. Or maybe you live a very cushy lifestyle and sometimes when something goes wrong, it upsets you. Just recognize that when you get to go through these experiences, all it's doing is preparing you to live a more fulfilled life and prepare you for these greater experiences that are going to come. You get to go through the hardship so you can experience the joy. You get to go through the heartache so you can experience the true love one day. You get to go through the pain and suffering so you live a more healthy lifestyle one day. Whatever this hard situation is, flip your mindset around from the I have to the I get to. Change that victim mentality, change that horrible, awful feeling to a feeling of joy, and recognize your life isn't as bad as it seems. Somebody's got it way worse than you and they're living a more fulfilled lifestyle. They're living happier. They're living a better life simply because it's a mindset. No matter what circumstance you're in, it's a mindset. Guys, thank you for listening to today's episode of the Get Over Yourself podcast. A little bit of a shorter episode, but it's something that I wanted to focus in on a little bit more from last week's episode. I feel like it's something we don't focus on inside of our lives enough, of setting aside that victim mentality and recognizing I get to do X, Y, or Z. Even if it's the good, the bad, or the ugly, I get to go through it. I hope you all recognize those blessings inside of your life. I hope you recognize exactly what you're going through in the moment. And even if it's very difficult, recognize that it could be for your benefit if you choose to have the mindset that it will be. It all comes down to your choice. You can either continue living that victim mentality and say, woe unto me, or you could change your life to become greater, happier, and more fulfilled. Start living your dreams. Don't let this victim mentality destroy you, and change it to an I get to mentality. Guys, once again, thank you so much. If you know anyone who can benefit from hearing today's podcast, feel free to send it to them. That's how I continue to grow the show, and I would appreciate it a ton. If you have any questions for me specifically, as always, down in the description down below will be my emails, other ways you can contact me. So if you have any questions, hit me up there. And guys, at the end of the day, just remember, it'll all be okay. Just take a step back and change your victim mentality into the I get to mentality.